Probably everyone has heard the line, everyone, Catholic or not, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Catholics have said this themselves. Others, not Catholic, have probably heard it in some movie where the penitent is in the confessional and some big turning point of the plot takes place and the sin is disclosed. Catholic life, it's probably much more humdrum and mundane. Bless me, Father, I lied, cheated, the garden variety of stuff. And if you listen to the priests, there is no new sin under the sun. They cannot be shocked. But in this video, I want to ask a question before we ever get to the confessional. And that question, I think, is key. The question is, why do I do the things that I do? Why am I creating this list of sins? What is wrong with me that I am the kind of person who makes these kinds of statements in the confessional? How does this sin begin? That's today's topic. In the ancient church, in our ancient Christian tradition going back millennia, we had the men known as the Desert Fathers, and there were some Desert Mothers as well. One of their discoveries was to enumerate a catalog of sins. They had variously 7 or 8. We've come down through the ages and sort of settled on the 7 deadly sins. The mnemonic device I was taught years ago as a kid. You wonder what we talked about in Catholic school. But the mnemonic device to remember these 7 deadly sins, the 7 capital sins, was pale gas, P-A-L-E-G-A-S, standing for pride, anger, lust, envy, gluttony, avarice, and sloth, or better known as acedia. So those are the 7 sins. In one form or another, we'll find them in the 10 Commandments, other moral precepts by which we guide our life. The argument I make here, it's not my argument, but what I want to offer here is that simply becoming cognizant that this or that sin, bless me, Father, for I have committed the sin of gluttony. I've committed the sin of lust or avarice or whatever, one of the 7 deadly. I've broken one of the 10 Commandments. The better question is not only that I did such a thing, but the more important question looking towards the future is, why am I doing that deed? What is underlying my motivation to be such a person who does one of the 7 deadly sins or violates this or that or all of the 10 Commandments? What's going on inside of me? What's going on before I get to the confessional? Now, I mentioned the Desert Fathers and their 7 deadly sins, 8, whatever. But what they also came to discover and to think about was the fact that humans, all humans, I think is their claim, and it seems to me borne out empirically, at least in my own little world, but that humans think about certain things. All of us do. Things like food, sex, feeling threatened. We think about self-preservation. We think about dignity. We think about power. We think about our own mortality. We think about things. And it is those thoughts, misguided or overemphasized in our lives, that give rise to those 7 deadly sins. So the argument of the Desert Fathers and Mothers is, let's go back to thinking about thoughts. They had a really cool word. Well, it's cool to me because I just discovered it not that long ago. But the word to think about your thoughts, this process of becoming awake or alert, or enlightened is not really it, but alert. How about that? The Greek word is nepsis, N-E-P-S-I-S, and it was the word used to describe this process of thinking about what we're thinking about. Now, to make this more concrete, if I am thinking about a thing, say I see an advertisement for a fancy, shiny, new, really expensive car, and I think, wow, that is so cool. Look at the neat color. Look at the stuff that the thing has in it. It's got every option available. Heated steering wheel. Who knew that that was a thing? You know, if I had this thing and I'm tooling around town, listening to the stereo, which is really good, the sound system in this thing and all the internet capabilities, and it tells me you turn left and right, all that cool stuff, all the digital stuff that's in a car, I would really feel cool. I would feel special. It would validate me somehow. It would put me less threatened in my puny little existence. It would make me somebody. And you can play this out, this hypothetical, and you can make this case that the attraction to a thing, to a car, is beginning to satisfy stuff in you that is more psychological or psychic. And it can lead us down a path that will ultimately, potentially, get us to one of those 7 deadly sins that we're going to recite in the confessional. So now I've been a sucker and I bought this car. I can't afford it. I'm way over my head in debt. I'm working overtime. I'm at wit's end. I'm stressed. I'm nervous. I'm worn out. I'm working too much. I'm absenting myself from my family. My wife pushes back. Where have you been? And I'm working for this car that's going to be just, so cool. And then one thing leads to another, and she says something to me, and I say something back, and I'm already on edge because I can't believe I was so stupid as to spend $75,000 on a car, and I only make $40,000 a year. And we get into an argument. I say things I should not have said. I was mean, I was vicious, I was ugly, and I was angry. So, I can go to the confessional. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I was angry, got into a bad argument with my wife. And yes, there is forgiveness under the sacrament. And yes, we are always forgiven. But wouldn't it be better going forward for me to examine why on earth I got to that stage of getting into that argument? What is it about me that makes me susceptible to thinking that a car is going to make me feel better about myself? This process of nepsis, of thinking about what happens before I sin, is a way of probing more deeply. What am I missing? What am I lacking in my life? What do I think is going to be better because now I've got this thing? And you can substitute thing for food or self-esteem or fame or sex or any other of those things that we think about and make the same sort of effort of thinking, well, what's wrong with me? What am I missing out here that leads me to have these thoughts? That's the process of nepsis, and the importance of it is that it offers an opportunity out of the pit of repeating over and over again that same thing that we find repugnant, morally repugnant. It's a way of getting into reformation and conversion, being more tomorrow than we are today, I want to be clear, with the grace of God, that with the grace of the Holy Spirit, we're able to see more clearly. Nepsis is that thing that we do to think about the thoughts that we have that can lead us astray. And so, really briefly, we've gone through this notion of nepsis, and we can return to this in days to come. Let me know if you would like to pursue this further. I think it's worth a further elaboration, a further walkthrough. But what we've done is begun to ask the question of why I am the way I am, what motivates and gets me into the moral predicament that I'm in. The call to action is not merely this lifting myself up by my bootstraps. Yes, there is responsibility, and yes, I am accountable, and yes, I do need to be attentive to who I am and what I'm doing. But it's not a venture that we do all by ourselves. Because what I want to bring to bear on this moral discernment, this assessment of my life and why I think the way I think, is to have something to refocus, to compare my crummy little life to something that's grander and nobler and more grace-filled. For instance, if I were to be judging this initial thought of, oh, cool car, can I have that, and measure that against other data, other moral frameworks in my brain of, say, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, if that's part of my moral universe, and certainly it ought to be, well then a car, even if it's red and cool, pales in comparison. And so the call to action here is to be rewired, to be refocused and reoriented so that the blessings of the gospel, the riches of our tradition, educate and bring me to a place of right reason, to bring me to a place of thinking correctly about this initially attractive something that's floating across my consciousness. So it's this having material, having other sources of information that really ought to be in the foreground of what I think about as I think about things. So, if you would, in the comments below, give me your thoughts. Let me know if you'd like to pursue this further. Also, below, I've listed a few resources that I found very helpful that will articulate this better than I have, give you some more background. So take a look at those. There's several books there really found helpful. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. And if you've not subscribed, subscribe, hit the alarm button so you get notified when the next video is up. And again, let me know what you would like to talk about with me. Send that along. And finally, thank you so much for being with me on this little journey, albeit very brief. May God bless you, and I will see you in the next video.